Hi, this is Alex from Kiero, and today we're talking to James, the regional sales manager at Beau Village. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, tell us about yourself.
Super. Well, hi, Alex. Yeah, basically, I'm originally from the UK, and whilst over there, I did a degree in French and history, and so had a kind of rapport with France already through that, and spent a year obviously living over here during that time. But then, sort of back in the UK, went into graduate programs in retail. So Kingfisher, who at the time owned some subsidiaries in France, and they're looking for kind of linguists. And then in my last job in the UK I got recruited by Marks and Spencer. So I was a store manager in London and various different parts around the UK. But we always had this kind of calling to come back to France at some point. So myself and my wife in 2000, I think it was 2007. Yeah, 2007, we decided just to quit our jobs, buy a house in France. We kind of had a good look round and decided that sort of Charente, Poitou-Charentes area at the time was the right ideal location for us, and basically started all over again. So back then we created our own estate agency, which we ran into. It became a very successful independent agency, kind of specialising in local French market, but really as well international market, which at the time not many agencies were doing really well. My wife's a marketing graduate, so that helped obviously tremendously. So that allowed us to grow the business. And in 2021, we were approached by Beau Village whether we would actually like to be bought out by them and kind of merge into their company. So we basically thought that was a great idea to be able to develop within a much bigger kind of organization. And so we agreed, and here we are. So my wife works in the marketing department within Beau Village. I'm a regional sales manager within the company. And at the same time, through all of that, so we have three daughters that are now kind of, bilingual, bicultural. We've all got dual French nationality and UK. So it's kind of, we're very much here. And this is our life, and we absolutely love it.
You're not planning on moving back to UK, so that's it.
Not unless something terrible happens, Alex.
Wow, okay. So you said you joined Beau Village. That was 2021, so it's actually pretty recent. Is that what I?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So basically, we were approached. I think it was actually beginning of 2021, and we basically had conversations about whether we wanted to stay as an independent agent and do something different, or become part of a bigger company. So the draw for us within Beau Village was that we could kind of carry on this sort of hybrid estate agency model, which was French focused, so local French agency, but also with a very strong international arm. And their kind of culture and environment pretty much suited my team's environment as well. So then we had 9 people working with us when we joined BVI, and they all came over and started working within BVI, and they're all still working within Beau Village. So that's been really important for me, because obviously if you grow a team, you want them all to be happy with any change that you bring in, but also then start to do really well. And they're all doing brilliantly within the Beau Village kind of company. So that's really good for me.
That's nice to hear. It's a success. I mean, it's been about 2 years. So can you tell me a bit more about Beau Village as a whole? Because I think we've got you've got about 2,000 listings, so it's about that, or probably a bit less. So it's sort of you cover most of France, actually, it's not just where you are, from one end.
So basically, the company started actually the same year that we started in 2007, and their kind of base at the beginning was down in Montségur, which is obviously down towards Bordeaux that way, in the southwest of France. And since then, they have grown their company. So Rob and Lynn, who founded the company and still work within the company, they've grown the company quite a lot into I think we have 22 physical agencies now, and we have teams across the southwest. So our most southern agency is probably Carcassonne. Our most northern one is Montmorillon in the Vienne, but we also have listings that kind of push up into the Loire, over into the kind of central France, and even we have kind of partnerships with different companies that work in Provence and different areas. So we cover a wide patch basically, but generally if you had to describe it, it's probably the big kind of southwest of France kind of corridor all the way down. That's our heartland. That's where we kind of have most of our business coming from. And what's really good from a company point of view is that Beauvillage are the associate partner of Savills. So Savills is basically a kind of international real estate company who are well known everywhere, and they deal with kind of all sorts of property, but they're probably most well known for the kind of high end prestige type properties internationally, and that's allowed us to really grow our portfolio of more kind of prestige properties, chateaus, manoirs, that kind of thing. And also it's a great kind of it's a great sort of accreditation for us to say that we're partners with Savills. They believe in quality, so do we, and it's really kind of a value sharing type kind of arrangement. So that's really good. And I think as a whole, we sell every type of property. So if you imagine, we sell barns and renovation projects for 10,000 euros, and we sell chateaus which are listed at 20 million euros. It's literally, we are across the whole breadth of the French real estate market.
Yeah.
And like I said before, we focus on French clients, and they can be local, but they can also be from the bigger towns. So in the last 2 years, we've seen lots and lots more people buying in rural France from Paris, from Lyon, from Bordeaux, from coming from all of these bigger towns, looking for more kind of rural properties, and also internationally. So we're very present, obviously, with the UK market. We work a lot with all of our kind of European neighbours, so Spanish, Italians, German, Swiss, lots of Belgians and Dutch as well, but also more internationally. We have quite a few American clients, more and more actually, Australians, from all around the world. So it's a really interesting thing, kind of a real mix of different buyer types and the countries they come from. So that allows us to kind of be quite flexible in our marketing to try and attract the maximum clients as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I did notice that you've got quite a wide range of prices, because I work with your marketing team quite often as I select properties that we use on the newsletter.
Yeah.
And I never really struggle to find a property. There's always one that I can put forward, or the marketing team sends me an email and says, here's one that's new and it looks great. And most of the time I just click on the property, and sometimes it's 200,000, sometimes it's 400,000. You've got, I mean, it's really interesting how you're not just focused on one sort of market, as is often the case with agencies. You're just, you really have, you've got a wide array of types of customers as well. I mean, it's, I can imagine the customers that are buying a chateau for 40 million euros are going to be a different kind of clients and expectations that someone that's buying a 10,000 euro a room that needs to be renovated.
Yeah, no, it's true. But having said that, what's interesting, why I always kind of say to my sales teams is that the needs of a client buying a 10,000 euro renovation project and those of a person buying a chateau for 40 million, actually, in many ways, they're exactly the same. Yeah. And although the price is hugely different, and although the agency commission is clearly very different, the amount of work and effort it takes on a 10,000 euro sale compared to a 20 million or 40 million is pretty much the same. Because actually a client's expectations, doesn't matter what the price of the property they're buying is, the client's expectations is that you're all there to give them the absolute best service possible. Yeah. And it doesn't really matter about the price. It's all about kind of, we work often harder on dossiers which are kind of smaller prices, smaller kind of commissions, because generally they can be more complicated in terms of planning permissions and all sorts of things that we have to help with. So it's often the case that you think, oh yeah, the clients, their needs would be completely different. They are different, but they're just as big a needs, if you see what I mean. So and that's really, really important to remember, is that we sell beautiful chateaus, manoirs, all sorts of wonderful properties that, viewing them, even I as an agent, I go in and think, wow, this is fantastic. But at the same time, I can get equally excited about a 40,000 euro renovation project with beautiful views and a huge kind of, lots of character and charm. It really is a very, very diverse market that we work in. I think the question you asked is correct, is that the customer's expectations and their expectations of great customer service, for me, is super important, because obviously coming from a retail background, it's all focused on the customer. You know, everything is about the kind of, you know, this is the most important thing. So we're one of the big changes from us from moving from an independent agency into a larger group has been that obviously when you're an independent agent, you can be very reactive, very quick. You know, you can be on the front foot as soon as a client makes a request for anything. You're there, you answer, because it's all managed within one team. When you're working across multiple teams, a client can make 10 different, you know, requests for information about 10 different properties across 10 different agencies. And so the one of the kind of projects that I'm working on with some others in the company is how do we bring the same level of customer service across a bigger company that we would give in a smaller company. And that's really kind of interesting to see the customer journey along all the different touch points within marketing, within the inquiries team, within the sales team, and also the kind of after sales dossier team, and basically trying to work out where we can improve it all the way across, because we give great customer service, but you know, in any company you can always do better. So that's one of our real focuses at the minute.
That's interesting, because I was about to move on to what are your biggest challenges for you know, Beau Village as a whole. So I'm assuming one of them is that you're growing, and as you're growing, you want to maintain the service that you are providing. You don't want to lose on that respect, but you probably have, I'm sure, a lot more challenges that you want to talk about with the current situation as well in the market. So it'd be interesting to hear what you think.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting market at the moment, because actually, so what's happened is obviously even when I started 2008, 2009, 2010 were the kind of crash years where everything kind of went pear-shaped and it was all very difficult. And actually what happened is the strongest estate agents in those times survived and grew, including my company and also Beau Village, if you see what I mean. So it's really kind of interesting the way we adapted to those situations. And then obviously you went through a kind of time of quite flattish growth. And then all of a sudden from about 2018 onwards, prices started to go up, volume of transactions started to go up. And then that just basically went into complete, I'd say kind of like a snowball effect after COVID. So, you know, as soon as the kind of lockdowns finished, there was a huge demand for French properties, you know, across all different sectors. You know, for me, last year was just the busiest year that I can ever remember in estate agency. It was so busy. There was so much demand, a lack of properties, a lack of stock, actually, because what happened was a lot of them got bought up, and you know, there was less properties coming on the market, and that of course causes its own challenges, because as an agency, you want to offer the most amount of properties you possibly can to a client, you know, to make sure that they've got a good selection. So that has been a real driver for us as well, about making sure that we've got enough properties to give a good selection to our clients. And then what's happened this year is that obviously the market has slowed down. So the challenges have come from, obviously, we know, you know, everyone probably knows them, but inflation, which has then led to interest rate rises, which has obviously led to a lack of lending from French banks, which then basically has an impact on the number of transactions which are going through, and ultimately will have some kind of impact on prices. So if we take them kind of one by one, so inflation kind of starts the process, and that's just starting to kind of drop a little bit in France now. So that's a good sign. The interest rate rises that came with it have obviously stopped certain clients from able to get mortgages. So I mean, a really interesting fact that we saw the other day was that in 2019, somebody, or 2020, somebody wanting to sort of borrow 100,000 euros back then, based on affordability criteria, which is how the French banks lend. Today, that same client can only borrow 75,000 euros. So if you times that by 4 or 5, depending on the price of the property, that can make a huge difference to the affordability that our clients have in terms of mortgages. And we're slightly protected as a company from that, because the majority of our clients that buy with us tend to be cash buyers or clients who are selling property to rebuy. But it doesn't take a genius to work out that at some point along the chain, normally there is a mortgage. You know, so if you need to sell a property in Paris to buy in the countryside, that's fair enough. But who's going to buy that property in Paris? Is it a mortgage? So somewhere along the line, there tends to be a mortgage available, a mortgage kind of that's necessary, and that then brings this kind of slowing down of the market that we've seen this year. So I'd say, I think the general industry is saying that it's been probably 21% decline in transactions this year. But then we're comparing that with the best year ever last year. So I think it's really important to look at it on a much longer time frame, because if the market, for me at the moment, it feels more like a market that we knew probably in 2018, 2017, if you see what I mean. It's coming back to a more sort of stable standard market. And at the beginning of the year, there was all these media stories about house prices in France are going to fall by 30%, and there's going to be a big crash. But actually, as we stand today, probably in our areas where we work, there's been 1-2% decline maybe in prices, and not everywhere. Some parts of France, the prices are still going up. So that's not really come all the way through yet. And I think that there will be some price decreases this year, but it's not going to be anywhere near the numbers that were kind of thrown out there at the beginning of the year. But it has meant that we're kind of coming back towards a buyer's market. So for a couple of years, we had a real seller's market. Properties would go on the market, there'll be loads of interest, they sold quickly, and really buyers were chasing new stock rather than vendors chasing buyers, if you see what I mean. And now what's happened is that we've kind of come back a little bit on that, but not completely. So I always say to people, be careful when you talk about a buyer's market, because right now, if a good property comes on at the right price, there are lots of people interested in buying it still. And I think the key thing for us is basically finding enough properties that meet the demands that our clients have currently got. And I think that's the kind of thing that is keeping us going and keeping us kind of active in the market, is because there are good properties out there and there are active buyers out there. And I think we just need to basically, if we bring the two together, then that's where our job as estate agents is so important. And that relies on good mandating, good sales agents, but also, good service that comes on the back of it, basically, in order to match the client with the property. So it's the challenges are there. They are kind of well known. I think, everyone in the industry is probably talking about them. But sales activity, although down on last year, it's still there, and there are still sales to be had. Generally speaking, the properties that are selling at the moment, the most of them tend to be ones that are new on the market, because that's where people are waiting and looking for new stock coming on. And there's a big so this is the key. This is the message we're telling vendors, is that get the price right, get the presentation right. There's a good chance you'll still sell your property even in a slightly slower market than before.
I really agree with what you say. It's really hard to rely on 2021 and even 2022 to say, what the market was. It wasn't a normal period. It was a period where people went out of their houses, out of lockdown, and I want a house with a garden. I need to get out of my apartment.
Yeah.
And I saw it where I am as well. Houses were selling really fast.
Yeah.
Often there was no negotiation, which is quite a rare thing in France. Normally there's a bit of negotiation. There wasn't. There was 3 buyers on one house, and the seller just goes, mini, mani, mo. Okay, you know.
Yeah.
And this year, it's just like you say, we're back to more normality.
Yeah.
Obviously, the fact that the interest rates were at 1% 2 years ago, which was not normal. Now they're at 5%, which is a lot more normal. Well, they're close to 5%.
Yeah.
He has, like you say, decreased the purchasing power of people. That 1 to 5% is a huge difference in even monthly sort of repayments. But I feel pretty optimistic about. I think the market. If you, like you say, you've got the right property at the right price, the right pictures, the right presentation, and the right, everything that sort of matches everything, then, you're fine. If a business is going to be okay.
Yeah.
And that's when I've got the next question is what you think are the opportunities coming up? What's exciting? I don't know what you've got in the horizon that you can exploit, that you can grow. Just any idea?
I think it's an interesting point what you just made as well. Is that probably for the last 2 years, as estate agents, a job is really to basically really qualify the client, find them the right property, present selection of properties which correspond to their criteria, and really kind of do the real kind of job that we're here for, which is taking the customer to find the property they want. So we're there to find them the right property. And probably in the last 2 years, it's been more a case of the buyer has seen a property and just wants to get in it, and then all of a sudden there's 2 or 3 buyers all after the same property. So the kind of the value add of an estate agent is probably slightly diminished in the last couple of years compared to before. But now we're back to a market where the value that's added by a good estate agent is huge, because if a client has certain criteria, and it's our job to basically scour the market, find the property, and make sure that that client buys the right property, hopefully with us, but sometimes not. And that's where the real kind of the added value of an estate agent comes in this market. And one of the things on the horizon, which is a big topic, and some companies will probably see it as a complication of their work, is everything that's come in to do with energy. So energy efficiency of properties, and the new laws coming in which relate to kind of lower rated F and G properties at the moment, which they call the passoire thermique, which is all properties that basically have poor insulation, often fossil fuel heating, and mainly oil is where they get their kind of lower marks. And there's a new kind of push within the country to really make sure that these properties where they have really poor energy ratings are improved, so that we can basically have a housing stock in the country which is a lot more energy efficient. And the main changes that have come in this year have been any property that you want to sell that is classified as an F or G, as of the 1st of April, you now have to have an energy audit on that property. So a diagnostic company will go in and they will basically bring together in a report a range of suggestions on how you could take your property from an F and turn it into a B. And that can include insulation, double glazing, more efficient heating systems, that kind of thing. Yeah. Now, if you read the press, a lot of estate agents are saying this is a real break on the market. This is really difficult because it complicates things. And in some ways it does. But then I think you often forget what the end goal is, because surely all of us want to improve the energy ratings of properties and basically, kind of pollute the environment less, spend less on energy, especially in the last 2 years where the prices have gone, through the roof. So you can see it in one or two ways. You can either see it as a kind of positive step, or we can see it in a negative way. And I think, for me personally, I see it as a very much positive thing. It takes a lot of explanation from a good agent to explain what these figures are for and what they relate to and what they kind of what impact they have. But again, good agents will do the right work in terms of customer service and educate their buyers about it. And if we end up in a few years' time where more and more properties are being classified B, C, then that can only be a good thing, because people will be spending less on fuel and energy, and especially in the rental market, the limitations are even stronger, because they're bringing in a law which says that anything rated G, I think it's from 2025, you're not allowed to rent it anymore. And then basically every kind of 2 or 3 years after that, they're upping the band. So that's forcing landlords to invest in better insulation, better heating systems in their kind of rental properties, which some people say, well, that's going to reduce the amount of rental properties on the market. It may do in the short term, but ultimately landlords always want to re-let their property at some point. So they're going to have to at some point, invest in those properties to bring them up to standard, as are homeowners. And I think overall, it's a really kind of, there's a lot of mixed messages coming out of the industry about this. But for me personally, I see it as a positive step forward that poses challenges to the industry and to estate agents. But actually, they're the kind of things that we should be dealing with and should be educating our buyers on. And again, that's where good estate agents probably stand out more than the less good ones.
I agree. I mean, I just actually bought a house that was rated F. So we had this second audit because we bought it in June. Yeah. So I'm familiar with the process. We knew from the start what made it a category F and what we have to do if we want to make it a category E, for example. Yeah. We bought it through a real estate agent, and he probably didn't really give me much information, but luckily I have a friend that is a diagnostiker. He does these things. And so he explained to me, okay, it's because you've got a gas heating, and you've got two windows that are single glazing. The rest are double glazing. If you do that and that, you're on E. Okay.
Yeah. And often customers can get a little bit kind of worried by it, because especially if they're from an international client that doesn't really speak French, they can look at this report and all they see is the numbers and they think, goodness me, it's going to cost me 150,000 euros to renovate this house to make it energy efficient. But actually, if you stand in the property with the clients and explain, okay, well, look, this is an exposed stone wall, so it doesn't rate very well in terms of insulation. Would you want to insulate this wall and have it plasterboarded to increase the rating of the property? And often the clients will say, oh no, I wouldn't want to get rid of the character. That's not what I want to do. And actually we go, okay, well then let's not look at that bit, but then let's maybe look at other things that can help. For example, heating systems, double glazing is a key one. Insulation in lofts and that kind of thing can make a huge difference. So I think you need to take it with a pinch of salt, but you also need to really kind of look into the detail with your agent to understand what these figures are and what you can do that are quick wins. Replacing 2 windows is not the hugest of costs compared to some of the other things, but it will make a big difference in your property. So this is the kind of conversations that we're having on a day-to-day basis with our clients and our buyers, and they're important conversations. And I think that's part of our droit de conseil, our responsibility to educate clients.
Okay, and then the buyer has can make a choice like I'm doing of well, let's see the first winter, see how how we get on with bills. And we know for a fact that if in 4 or 5 years time we want to sell the house, we will get on to change the windows and stuff like that, because it will be preferential to as a seller to have a house that's better rated. Because I think in the next couple of years, if you have a house that's rated F, not such a good thing, I think.
Yeah, and it's also going into it eyes open, isn't it? As long as you know what you're buying and the good points and the bad points, then ultimately you make a decision based on that. But it's having the information available, and I think the fact that now buyers have more and more information available. I mean, when I started in 2007, I think the dossier technique was probably about 12 pages, and now it's kind of 120 plus another energy audit, which is probably another 50 pages. So look, they're big documents, but ultimately it just increases the amount of information that buyers have at their disposal, when they're buying a French property. And for me, the more information for a buyer, the better, because that means they're more informed, more aware of what the kind of, the good points and the bad points of a property are. And there's less surprises. So I think it can only be a good thing.
When you go international buyers, I mean, do they have this sort of things as well in UK, Germany? I'm guessing it's not just France that's sort of going through all this.
No, different countries have different steps along the way. So certain buyers are from different countries are really kind of switched on to this, and they already understand that this is part of the norm. And other countries, it's kind of like, whoa, what's this thing? What does it mean? And what are the numbers in it? Because that's the kind of key thing, is that if you don't understand the language, all you look at numbers, you look at and the costs. It's and again, it's all about giving the right information, informing the client, and making sure they know what they're doing. And I think that is, it's part of the future. Everyone's got to adapt to it, and I think it's a step in the right direction, and it's just going to kind of grow from here, I think. So it's here to stay, and every estate agent in the country needs to adapt to it, especially when they're dealing with international buyers who don't understand what this is, what these documents are, and what they relate to.
Well, it was really great chatting with you and getting to know you, getting to know Beau Village, and what's coming up in the next couple of years as well for you as a business.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're really happy working with you as well, and looking forward to a long-term partnership as well. So it's so good. Very happy.
Yeah, super. Listen, thanks for that, Alex. And if anyone's got any questions, then feel free to pass them on to me. Okay.
Sure, no problem. All right.
Brilliant. Thanks. Take care. Bye now.
Bye.